The announcement authorizing the transfer of over $11 billion in advanced military hardware to Taiwan, approved amidst the escalating geopolitical tension between Washington and Beijing, should be viewed not merely as a transaction, but as a carefully calculated political communication.
This landmark deal, secured during the second term of the Trump administration, comprising significant assets such as HIMARS rocket systems, self-propelled artillery, and crucially, thousands of Javelin anti-tank missiles and Altius loitering munitions, seems primarily intended to send a robust and immediate message of reassurance to Taipei.
For months, perhaps years prior to this decision, anxieties had simmered in Taiwan regarding its perceived status as a potential bargaining chip in the wider context of U.S.-China economic negotiations. The sheer scale and composition of this package, therefore, might be interpreted as a firm declaration that, irrespective of rhetoric surrounding trade tariffs or diplomatic cooling, Washington's fundamental commitment to supporting Taiwan's capacity for self-defense remains ironclad.
This specific focus on strengthening deterrence, even while the U.S. simultaneously seeks to de-escalate certain economic frictions with mainland China, strongly suggests that the policy guiding the transfer is rooted in a determination to uphold regional stability through military strength. The nature of the weapons included in this monumental sale is perhaps the most revealing element of this strategic message.
While high-profile assets like the HIMARS and long-range ATACMS capture headlines, signifying an enhancement of Taiwan's capacity for long-range interdiction, an ability long sought by the island, the inclusion of the cheaper, highly effective, asymmetrical capabilities is what truly aligns this package with Taipei's defensive strategy.
The substantial numbers of Javelin missiles and the advanced Altius suicide drones appear to underscore a shift in U.S. emphasis, moving away from purely large, expensive legacy platforms toward the rapid integration of small, highly distributed systems. This preference aligns perfectly with Taiwan's hedgehog strategy, which posits that the island's best defense lies in possessing a plethora of mobile, survivable, and cost-effective systems designed to inflict unacceptable attrition on a potential invading force.
Thus, the arms sale seems to be signaling a deep strategic consensus between Washington and Taipei regarding the most effective path forward for deterrence in a challenging operational environment. However, the political analysis of this move must remain nuanced, acknowledging the potential countersignals and inherent risks involved.
The primary goal of sending reassurance to Taiwan simultaneously incurs the risk of provocation toward Beijing, which views such sales as egregious violations of its sovereignty and a direct interference in internal affairs. The Chinese Foreign Ministry's immediate and forceful denunciation, characterizing the deal as gravely undermining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, serves as a stark reminder that every effort to enhance Taipei's security inevitably raises the stakes of the overall cross-strait conflict.
Furthermore, the decision raises complex questions about the consistency of American foreign policy across different administrations. Some analysts might argue that this move represents a sharp continuation, even an intensification, of a bipartisan policy thread focused on shoring up deterrence, suggesting that the underlying strategic framework for dealing with Taiwan is less vulnerable to the political vicissitudes of presidential transitions than observers might initially assume.
Indeed, former officials have noted that the approach to Taiwan under the Trump administration appears to mirror predecessor strategies more closely than popular perception might suggest, indicating a deep institutional consensus, especially within the military and Congress, supporting Taiwan's defense needs. Conversely, one hypothesis is that while the arms sale successfully alleviates immediate Taiwanese fears about being abandoned, it also further erodes the decades-long U.S. policy of strategic ambiguity. Strategic ambiguity was designed to achieve a delicate balance, keeping Beijing uncertain about the prospect of U.S. military intervention, thereby deterring action, while simultaneously preventing Taipei from unilaterally declaring independence.
By repeatedly increasing the capacity and sophistication of Taiwan's defense systems, and by presidential candidates making strong implied commitments regarding defense, the distinction between strategic ambiguity and overt strategic clarity becomes increasingly blurred. This blurring, while potentially reassuring to U.S. allies,
inherently increases the margin of risk. A clearer signal of commitment, even through military hardware sales, may inadvertently challenge Beijing's red lines, forcing a more aggressive timeline or posture from the People's Liberation Army. Therefore, while the immediate political message is one of firm reassurance to a key partner, the long-term impact on the delicate status quo of the Taiwan Strait remains a profound challenge that the current administration must navigate with extreme caution, ensuring that enhanced deterrence does not become an engine for unintended escalation. The total package, exceeding $11 billion, was not merely a collection of items. It was a highly curated statement of intent, split between two distinct defensive philosophies. The larger, more immediate allocation focused on conventional, heavy deterrence, the sort of hardware necessary for delaying a potential invasion. This included the highly sought-after 82 HIMARS multiple rocket launcher systems and their associated 420 Army Tactical Missile Systems, or ATACMS, representing over $4 billion in long-range precision strike capability. Coupled with 60 advanced self-propelled howitzer systems, also valued near $4 billion, this equipment provides Taiwan with significant long-range fire support capabilities it has long requested, effectively enhancing the island's capacity for deep strikes against potential staging areas and coastal concentration points. The political message embedded within this heavy hardware procurement is clear. The U.S. is committed to ensuring Taiwan possesses the tools for robust conventional defense, maintaining the capability to inflict high costs on an invading force, even before land forces are engaged. However, the truly intriguing aspect of this package, the component most aligned with contemporary U.S. strategic doctrine, lies in the lower-cost asymmetric systems, those that speak directly to the island's unique defensive geography and the concept often termed the hedgehog strategy. It is here we see the decisive pivot toward maximizing operational resilience. This component includes a substantial purchase of Javelin anti-tank missiles, valued at $375 million, weapons that have proven devastatingly effective and survivable in the current conflict in Ukraine, and critically, over $1 billion earmarked for Altius loitering munitions or suicide drones. This emphasis strongly reflects Washington's repeated calls for Taipei to shift away from reliance on large, expensive legacy platforms, such as major naval vessels or fourth-generation fighters, toward highly survivable, distributed, and cost-effective capabilities. The logic underpinning this choice is compelling. In a potential cross-strait conflict scenario, air superiority might be hotly contested or even temporarily lost. But small, numerous, and decentralized weapons like these drones and portable anti-arm missiles provide ground forces with the capacity to inflict disproportionate losses on invading forces, thereby turning the island into an immensely difficult and painful objective to seize. This approach, centered on operational resilience and minimizing easily targeted assets during initial Chinese strikes, suggests a deeper, more cohesive alignment between Taipei's defensive planning and Washington's priorities than has historically been evident. Expert analysis suggests this significant transaction represents less of a sudden policy change and more a continuation of American strategic hardening, albeit with sharper edges, as noted by senior analysts like Craig Singleton. Furthermore, observers like Rush Doshi see strong hallmarks of continuity with the preceding presidential administration, indicating that U.S. policy toward Taiwan may be less volatile across political transitions than external appearances might suggest, benefiting from broad support across the U.S. Congress and the military establishment, regardless of who occupies the White House. This package served a vital purpose beyond raw military capability: political reassurance. There had been widespread concern among officials in Taipei, particularly following the president's past statements suggesting trade priorities might occasionally supersede security guarantees, that Taiwan could be treated merely as a negotiating asset in broader dealings with Beijing. This $11 billion commitment, however, firmly signals that the U.S. continues to prioritize conflict deterrence in the Taiwan Strait by actively bolstering the island's self-defense capabilities. Yet the very strength of this assertive message carries inherent geopolitical risks. The foremost counterargument comes inevitably from Beijing. The Chinese Foreign Ministry immediately condemned the transaction, asserting it severely undermines cross-strait peace and stability, viewing the sales as an explicit violation of China's sovereignty and a grave intervention into its internal affairs. For decades, Washington meticulously maintained a delicate policy known as strategic ambiguity, designed to keep Beijing guessing about U.S. intervention intentions while simultaneously restraining Taipei from formally declaring independence. However, the sheer scale and aggressive nature of recent PLA military maneuvers around the island have increasingly challenged the viability of this ambiguity. Analysts like James T.
Arity suggests that while this arms sale definitively boosts deterrence capabilities, it simultaneously pushes against the established bounds of that traditional ambiguity, potentially raising the temperature across the strait at a time when diplomatic de-escalation is being sought in other economic domains.
It is likely that the current administration is attempting to thread an extremely fine needle, strengthening Taiwan's resilience without provoking a premature or kinetic response, adhering to the logic that enhanced deterrence is the most sustainable path to preserving peace, while understanding that every increase in capability is perceived by the mainland as a step closer to formal, permanent separation.
Ultimately, the decision to approve this historic arms package reflects a geopolitical calculus driven by necessity. The administration, while explicitly prioritizing the avoidance of new conflicts, as stated by officials noting the president's desire for allies to shoulder greater defense costs, must ensure that Taiwan possesses the means to defend itself robustly against mounting external pressure.
This package perfectly aligns with that logic. It represents a substantial investment in self-defense designed to shift the risk-reward calculation for any potential aggressor contemplating unilateral change to the status quo. The immediate open loop, the question of whether the U.S. commitment would soften under a new administration, has been definitively closed with this transfer of sophisticated capability.
The enduring strategic conflict, however, remains the perpetual tension between the requirements of robust deterrence and the omnipresent risk of unintended escalation in a critically sensitive region. The hope is that the hedgehog strategy capability will function exactly as intended, to stabilize the military balance by making the cost of conflict prohibitively high, thus preserving the current, albeit fragile, peace.
The continued effectiveness of this complex policy hinges entirely on how cautiously and consistently this strategic trajectory is maintained by all parties involved, regardless of future political transitions. The analysis and commentary presented in this video are based solely on publicly available sources, expert opinion, and represent the channel's own independent perspective on these complex and evolving international affairs.